Good day, everybody. This is Lenny Esposito with Come Let Us Reason Together. And today we've got an interesting topic on tap for you. We're going to be talking about the recent video that's actually taken the internet by storm, the EctoLife video, talking about artificial wombs, artificial opportunities to create new human life and what that means. And joining me today, I'm excited to introduce to you one of my good friends, Tony Costello. Tony, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm a little, this topic that you sent me is a little unnerving, to say the least. But it's definitely something that we need to address in the church.
Absolutely. So, yeah. We're going to jump into this, and what I wanted to do is beforehand, before we get too far into it, so that our listeners can understand what I'm talking about, because maybe some folks haven't seen it. I'm going to go ahead and play the EctoLife video, and then you'll be able to understand a little bit more about what we're talking about. So hold on a minute. We will start that right now.
Introducing EctoLife, the world's first artificial womb facility, powered entirely by renewable energy. EctoLife allows infertile couple to conceive a baby and become the true biological parents of their own offspring. It's a perfect solution for women who had their uterus surgically removed due to cancer or other complications. With EctoLife, premature births and C-sections will be a thing of the past. EctoLife is designed to help countries that are suffering from severe population decline, including Japan, Bulgaria, South Korea, and many others. The facility features 75 highly equipped labs. Each state-of-the-art lab can accommodate up to 400 growth pods or artificial wombs. Every pod is designed to replicate the exact conditions that exist inside the mother's uterus. A single building can incubate up to 30,000 lab-grown babies per year. EctoLife allows your baby to develop in an infection-free environment. The pods are made of materials that prevent germs from sticking to their surfaces. Every growth pod features sensors that can monitor your baby's vital signs, including heartbeat, temperature, blood pressure, breathing rate, and oxygen saturation. The artificial intelligence-based system also monitors the physical features of your baby and reports any potential genetic abnormalities. The pods are equipped with a screen that displays real-time data on the developmental progress of your baby. These data are sent directly to your phone so you can track your baby's health from the comfort of your zone. The app also provides you with a high-resolution live view of your baby's development. A special section in the app allows you to watch a time-lapse of your baby's growth and share it directly with your loved ones. Because babies can recognize language and learn new words while still in the womb, EctoLife growth pods feature internal speakers that play a wide range of words and music to your baby. Through the app, you can choose the playlist that your baby listens to. You can also directly sing to your baby and make them familiar with your voice before birth. Our goal is to provide you with an intelligent offspring that truly reflects your smart choices. EctoLife improves your bonding experience with your baby. Thanks to a 360 degrees camera that's fitted inside your baby's growth pod, you can use your virtual reality headset to explore what it's like to be in your baby's place. See what they see and hear what they hear. Using a wireless haptic suit connected to your baby's growth pod, you will be able to sense their kicks in the womb and share this experience with your friends and family members. With EctoLife, your baby will receive the best nutrients that can support their growth. Each group of pods is connected to 2 central bioreactors. The first bioreactor contains nutrients and oxygen, which are supplied to your baby through an artificial umbilical cord. This bioreactor also contains a liquid solution that serves as the amniotic fluid that surrounds babies in the mother's uterus. It's rich of vital hormones, growth factors, and antibodies that sustain your baby's growth and development. Thanks to a system controlled by artificial intelligence, each baby receives custom nutrients tailored to their needs. The second bioreactor is designed to eliminate any waste products produced by the babies. The artificial umbilical cord helps the babies to release their waste products into the second bioreactor. With the help of a delicate layer of engineered enzymes, the second bioreactor can then recycle waste products and turn them back into useful nutrients. This way, the facility ensures a steady and sustainable supply of fresh nutrients to your baby. With EctoLife, miscarriage and low sperm count are a thing of the past. Prior to placing the fertilized embryo of your baby inside the growth pod, in vitro fertilization is used to create and select the most viable and genetically superior embryo, giving your baby a chance to develop without any biological hurdles. And if you want your baby to stand out and have a brighter future, our Elite package offers you the opportunity to genetically engineer the embryo before implanting it into the artificial womb. Thanks to CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing tool, you can edit any trait of your baby through a wide range of over 300 genes. By genetically engineering a set of genes, the Elite package allows you to customize your baby's eye color, hair color, skin tone, physical strength, height, and level of intelligence. It also allows you to fix any inherited genetic diseases that are part of your family history so that your baby and their offspring will live a healthy, comfortable life free of genetic diseases. Say goodbye to the pain of childbirth and birth-related muscle contractions. EctoLife provides you a safe, pain-free alternative that helps you deliver your baby without stress. The delivery process is smooth, convenient, and can be done with just a push of a button. After discharging the amniotic fluid from the artificial womb, you will be able to easily remove your baby from the growth pod. Everything is perfectly designed so you and your partner can enjoy the delivery process. To ensure full transparency, our post-delivery free DNA paternity test helps you confirm the genetic identity of your baby so you can return home knowing that your baby is genetically yours. You don't have to worry about power cuts or carbon footprint. EctoLife uses highly efficient, clean, renewable energy consisting of solar and wind power. The highly advanced pods operate with minimal energy needs, making it easy for your baby to make it to full term without any complications. And for those who want a more convenient solution, EctoLife is made accessible so your life can be easier. Thanks to our miniaturized bioreactors and long-lasting batteries, you can use EctoLife growth pods at the comfort of your home, allowing you to incubate your baby in your building without the need to visit our factory. By owning your special growth pod, you will have the ability to build a happy family, one baby at a time, away from any birth complications. The concept of EctoLife facility was designed by biotechnologist and science communicator Hashim Al-Ghaili. It relies on groundbreaking research work that has been conducted by scientists and engineers since 1950s. Tired of waiting for a response from an adoption agency? Unable to find a suitable surrogate mother? Worried about pregnancy complications? Worry no more, because EctoLife got you covered. EctoLife, reinventing evolution.
Okay, so that's the EctoLife video.
I'm glad to watch it again.
Yeah. First of all, I want to just preface this for folks to understand this isn't reality. This isn't going on market next week or next year. This is future casting. So what Hashim Al-Ghaili is doing, and he's primarily a science writer, is he's taking technologies as they exist today and as they're working towards in the future and saying, eventually this is what we will be able to do. He's not saying that this is what we can do right now. Matter of fact, some of the folks that were interviewed commenting on the piece said, well, currently we can do in vitro fertilization and have the embryo start to grow up to about 6 weeks before implantation. And then we can also take premature infants from, say, about week 25 that have to have an early delivery, and we can keep them in neonatal units until they fully mature. So there's actually just a 14-week gap today where we're dealing with the impossibility, so to speak, of this kind of thing. But that's important to know that this isn't tomorrow. But the fact that it's there, and I really looked into this to say, is this somebody just trying to put us on? Because there's a lot of goofy stuff out there saying, right, somebody's, this is just a big scam. And so far I've not found anybody that says it. It may still be true that it's a big scam, but somebody's tongue in cheek saying, look at how many people are gullible enough to buy this thing. That may very well be true. But what I found interesting is those individuals in reproductive technologies that were interviewed, they didn't seem to poo-poo this. So whether this is a scam or not, it may actually be where we're going. So Tony, what was your first thought in looking at this?
I mean, I tell you, I had so many things, because I have not really been tracking what I would call, just to put a simple term on it, super technologies, right? These kinds of things that really get very deep into the matrix of ontology, human ontology.
Right. Funny you should mention the Matrix, because that's one of the
I know, it just came out.
One of the immediate scenes I think that we saw, right? It looked like the kid when Neo gets birthed out of the cubicle. It's the exact same scene.
So these technologies that were either there or very close to being there, I mean, they're pretty unnerving, because so one of my first considerations from a theological perspective is, there is this sense that there are communicable attributes, right, between God and man. There are certain attributes of the divine that we possess in virtue of being made in the image and likeness of God. One of them is our creative capacities, right? God is creator, and we also can, in a sort of have way, create, but even there we can create, and have created incredible technologies. And one of the things that I started thinking about was a book that I read by the French sociologist Jacques Ellul called The Meaning of the City. Now, he also wrote another book called Technological Man, which I haven't read yet. But he gives a very interesting take on the story of Cain, who is not only the first murderer in history, but also the builder of the first city in history. And the city is representative of human techne, right? Cain is the first user of technology to build sort of a place for himself. And what does Cain name the city? He names the city after his first son, Enoch. Right? So there's, Ellul talks about Cain wandering off from God after the murder of Abel. Yeah. Being separated, God, being sort of condemned to wander, but he needs to find a place of security that is, in a sense, not that is apart from the security he would find in God. Okay. So he has to develop his own place, his own way of being secure. And this is the technology. This is man sort of becoming, homo faber, the man maker of things. And one of the things that struck me especially about this is not only do you have technology, but it's connected to the most creative act we can do naturally, which is the production of children, right? Which there's nothing more in our realm of experience that is more like God bringing the
That's
universe
right.
into creation, into existence, than a man and a woman bringing a whole new human person into existence.
It's his ultimate act of creation. Absolutely.
Yeah. But, and so, I mean, in one sense with this conceptual technology, it's not there yet, but he's conceiving of it. There is an intention there. I mean, clearly what we have is an intention in the imagination of this man and others to, the material seems to be the same. I mean, this was a question that did come up in a conference on theological anthropology I was at a few years back about, if certain genetic technologies were used to create sort of novel types of human beings, would we ascribe the imago Dei to these novel people? Now, one thing in the video they do say, it's your baby, you are the biological parents.
Right, they stress that.
So the ontology seems the same, right? It's still a real baby from two parents, right? With all the necessary genetic material.
Right.
But the process now seems entirely outsourced to technology,
right,
away from nature and to technology. I mean, one thinks of Lord of the Rings a little bit, and Sauron making the orcs in the bottom, in the pits of the tower or whatever.
What's very interesting about this is if the dystopian novel has been around for quite some time. And really, all of them are just riffs off of Plato's Republic, the philosopher king's rule. That's where but for most of humanity, we understood that when you put man in charge in an ultimate capacity and you start ranking individuals by their attributes, and the highest sit at the top of the pecking order, that is a recipe for disaster. And that's primarily what the dystopian tale has always been. 1984 is often the most referenced, but I think one that's more applicable to us was Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Because the difference between the two is 1984, of course, it is the government pushing down and dominating on the people, and the people must succumb through deceit, historical rewrites, things like that. In Huxley's Brave New World, it's the reverse. What Huxley envisioned was a people that demanded to be anesthetized, basically. I want to have fun. I don't want to have to work harder than I need to. So therefore, there's these class structures, and you give me my soma, and you give me my free sex, and that's all I want. I want to have fun. And the novel starts with Mustafa Mann walking a group of students through their birthing facility, which is basically like this. That's how the novel starts. And anyone who has a baby naturally is considered a savage.
Savage. John the Savage is
that's how they define them. So it's interesting. There's so many things.
Very much like that book. And one wonders if the conceptual artist thinker, is, I'm sure he's aware of Huxley's work. Yeah. Right. And, but one of the things that frightens me, though, is about our human nature. And I think, if there's a proper use to technology, we know that throughout human history, there's also been an equal, if not greater, abuse of technology. So, the potential for abuse of something like this is immense.
Yes, and what they don't say. So there's some certain things that they don't say in the video. For example, they say that through CRISPR-Cas9 editing, you can choose things like your baby's hair color, hair texture, skin tone. So we're going to erase your race is what you think everybody's going to choose to be the darkest African skin tone? Is that where you think the world? What are you actually saying is I get to choose my baby to be white even if I'm not?
Well, and and this was a point you made when we had our initial discussion about the commodification of human beings.
Yes.
Which, of course, there's a historical precedent for that, which is which is any various types of slavery,
right? Where
human beings are treated in a sense as a product. Now here we really have human being, not really, not quite, but because the process is all outsourced to technology, it becomes that much closer to saying we are our own creators, right? We are the product of our own hands, and whatever we can create, we can also control. And whatever we control, once we no longer have any use for it, we can also dispose of, which, we're already seeing things like that in end-of-life issues, where we're already treating ourselves as sort of disposable things. So there's definitely a question of how outsourcing the process of in utero development to technology will destroy our relationship to our own species, to our own self.
Oh, and there's multiple other issues. And again, it's an idealized version. For example, we know that passing through the birth canal, for example, is nature's way of purging the lungs of amniotic fluid so they could take their first breath. And it's just a much better way to be born. But beyond that, do you remember the Tamagotchis? Remember that craze in the late 90s where you had the little Japanese egg and it was your pet dog or something like that, and you had to remember to feed it 3 times a day? This is what it feels like to me. Oh, you can put on a vest and you can feel the baby's kicks. Or you can leave it at your apartment and go out and play all day. And the baby, because I don't want any of that dirty stuff.
It's an elimination of, and this is like, the use of technology to eliminate pain and discomfort from the human experience, right?
As if pain and discomfort actually don't aid us in certain instances.
Right. So it's actually a very shallow form of hedonism, because even ancient hedonists knew that painful things could, in a sense, bring about greater goods for you.
Yeah.
Epicurus would have said something like that. This is a very much like the continued push to, and it seems to be sort of like an extension of, these 19th and 20th century philosophies that the church is just catching up with, of language and how we use language, where we don't even want we want to eliminate language that can have potentially emotionally disturbing effects on people's psyche, right, to the point of becoming very totalitarian about it.
Yeah.
And this is sort of another version of that, where you're trying to eliminate a whole realm of, especially for the mother, right?
Yes, exactly.
Now is not going to have actually, and one question I had is, look, I don't know how many mothers. The first part presents it as very magnanimous in addressing mothers who maybe have had their wombs removed because of cancer,
right,
and can't have their own biological children, and why wait for adoption, and so on and so forth. But it does seem to me there might be some initial resistance from women saying, maybe that most women, at least right now, would still say, no, I want to carry my baby. Right, there's a whole experience there I don't want to miss out on. I don't want to sever that relational aspect of, having a child.
Yeah. So this actually prompts the question of who are the real market for this issue, and obviously you have to go immediately to the homosexual community, because homosexual community by definition cannot have natural children. It just by definition. And again, these are some of the unstated aspects of what we're talking about. Now, let me give you a couple of stats so that you can understand this. In 2017, pregnancy rates for women aged 24 or younger reached their lowest recorded levels in the U.S. These rates continued a long-standing decline, which started in the late 1980s. And in 2017, there were 14 pregnancies per 1,000 women aged 15 to 17. That's down from a peak of 75. So from 75 to 24 and 14, 75 to 14 and 15. Now 15 to 17, that's okay maybe. But 57 pregnancies per 1,000 women aged 18 to 19. 57 as opposed to 175 in 1991. And 111 pregnancies versus 202 from 1990. So in less than 20 years, we've basically cut the number of pregnancies in half during the primary childbearing years. Now, older women are increasingly becoming pregnant. Those aged 35 to 39 have shown an increase up to 73 per 1,000 women, and the rate of those 40 or older are 19 per 1,000 women. This never happened before because you're in perimenopause for the most time, and you're seeing greater growth in that. So what you're seeing is women who get on the fast track, want to establish themselves, establish their career. They're in their mid-30s. Right. They want to have children. And what's happening is they're finding out that, and any good OBGYN will tell you, 35 and on is you're considered high-risk pregnancy because you can enter menopause at 55. That's very common, which means that you start perimenopause, where your hormones start fluctuating 48 to 50, somewhere in there. But you can also start menopause at 45. That's very common, which means that you start hormone fluctuations in your late 30s. And a lot of women, and I've read this from people, they go to have a child and they say, nobody told me that I had this window that I couldn't. I thought at 38 I could just have my kids, I have established my career and they're finding out that they can't do that. And so that's one aspect that I think of folks that are reaching for this. They mentioned in the video, low birth rate countries like South Korea, and that's true. They have very low birth rate countries. Right. They're not going to, but that again then asks the question: well, what do you do with these babies once you create them? Whose are they going to be? It's not that they can't get pregnant; it's that they're choosing not to.
They're choosing not just to not birth children; they're choosing not to raise children either.
Exactly.
They don't want the of having to raise a child or multiple children. So I don't know that I mean that's another question, is whether or not this would be really interesting to low birth rate countries. Because it seems to me that this anti-natalism movement, for example, that is emerged in places like Europe, in the U.S. to some degree, is not just about not having. I mean, now the anti-natalists, they're totally wrong on the issue of population.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. Which this video is actually a counterexample of the idea that we're overpopulated.
Yes, exactly.
It's, because I mean, and I've read some of the literature on this recently, that we're heading towards a population crisis in a few decades. There's going to be a population shortage. I mean, my concern, my main concern, the two main concerns, just to take it back to, is, now you've raised a third one, because about making decisions.
Yes.
I mean, what does this do if the idea is that we can eliminate, through the use of technology, all of the consequences of sin as it has affected the natural world? Because there's a curse on the created order as well, right? Where we get old. Our bodies don't work after 35 or 40 as they did, when we were younger. And think of all the moral decision making that has to be taken into account in order to sort of, do hard things, make good decisions, make wise choices, so on and so forth. All character issues, issues of character and morality. But we have technology now. See, not only can technology eliminate physical pain, it can sort of relieve the burden of having to almost make moral decisions. Right?
You think so, but that's not true, obviously.
No, because obviously it's going to get misused, and then we're going to have a whole new set of moral decisions.
Yeah, so I want to take that, and I'm going to turn a corner because, again, this may seem theoretical, and why are we worried about it now? I can hear some people say things like that, but let's talk about real world scenarios today and how the reproductive technologies of today are causing untold problems. Because, as you said, the mindset, the philosophy that undergirds this, the way we look at people and the way we look at childbirth, the way we look at technology vis-a-vis the human entity, that's still the same. So how is it playing out in the real world? Let me give you this story from NBC News. This just happened this year. It was reported the 6th of July of this year, 2022. Albert Sanager and Anthony Sanager brought a lawsuit in Los Angeles Superior Court against HRC Fertility and fertility specialist Bradford A. Kolb, alleging breach of contract, medical malpractice, negligence, fraudulent concealment, and violation of the Unfair Competition Law and the Consumer Legals Remedy Act. The Sanagers, homosexual married couple, met more than 10 years ago. They married in 2013, dreamed of having a maximum of 2 children, both sons, the suit states. Instead, HRC and Kolb, quote, negligently, recklessly, and or intentionally transferred a female embryo into the Sanagers' gestational carrier, according to the suit. So here I've ordered up my babies. We want to have 2. We want them to be male, etc. And we're able to select for this even today. But HRC implanted a female embryo into a gestational carrier, and now they're suing the fertility clinic for breach of contract. We're taking an idea, we're taking a process, we're taking an event, the creation of new life, that everybody celebrates as an, right? You hear it, the miracle of birth, that phrase we use over and over again. And we reduced it to ordering the right shade of car upholstery. We are placing our orders even today and expecting our expectations to be filled. Now, I mentioned this to you. We talked about it. If there was only a word in English that we had that captured this idea of being able to place an order and pay some money, and you get a human being out of it, what would we call that? What would that word be? It's slavery. That's kind of the definition of slavery.
Yeah.
And children are Tamagotchi. There are accessories to our lives. They're not central to our lives.
Well, look at. This is a problem. And psychiatrists, psychologists, marriage and family therapists know about this. Pastors, if they're astute, understand it. This is a problem. C.S. Lewis wrote about this. I think it's in The Great Divorce, chapter 10 or 11, where he talks about Pam. Pam is the mother who loses her child at a young age, and then she gets to go up to heaven and desperately wants to find her child, Michael. Why? Because it's my child. And
that's right. I remember that.
There's already the desire. It's a disordered desire in the human heart to possess another person, and this is a real danger for for mothers, for any woman who has children, is to cling on to their children as if they are a possession and not an independent, or eventually an independent person of their own. We talk about
a person who's been basically
the helicopter, or the helicopter mom.
Right.
But look, there was one of my favorite television series of all time, which is also the last one I watched live, was Everybody Loves Raymond, which was one of the funniest shows on television. And the reason it was funny, because the whole premise of the show was you have this overbearing mother who sees her youngest son as her possession, and she can never leave him, right?
Right.
And so that's already there. Now it's almost like this could feed that very egoistical disordered desire, because what the theological analogy to that is, God does not do this with his children.
Yeah.
He does not. I mean, God, there's a theological term called apatheia, where God removes or hides part of himself so that we can make our free choices, so that we can come to know him in a sense, not through total compulsion. Well, I mean, I don't want to get into a Calvinist thing, but there is a sense where God removes himself, right? Because he wants us to choose him. He wants us to love him freely, and so on and so forth. And so I think this using the technology now it can feed into this idea that we can possess, that we can have as a possession another human being, which, as you said, well, it's the history of slavery. We've already been down this road.
Exactly. However, what's interesting in our legal system, there seems to be some difficulty in understanding what children are and how biology relates to it. So there's a very famous case in 1990 on a surrogacy case, the Baby M case. It set a precedent. And what the court said, MC, Melissa Cook, was a 47-year-old surrogate, pregnant with triplets found after a round of in vitro fertilization treatments. Doctors implanted the 3 embryos in her womb. Chester Moore was the individual that submitted the sperm. They had a third donor for eggs. Okay, so she's carrying she's gestation, donor sperm, donor eggs. Chester Moore was the sperm donor. Moore demanded that Cook abort one of the babies pursuant to the terms of the surrogacy contract. So Moore is actually wanting to have children. Cook is the surrogate. They implanted 3. He only wants 2. He wants her to abort one. But Cook was pro-life, and she refused to have an abortion. However, the courts said that even though Cook was going to be the birth mother of these individuals, she had no parental rights because she lacked, quote, an intent to parent, end quote. So the idea that because Cook wanted the children, ordered them up, and even though, Moore ordered the children, and Cook, right, even though she was going to deliver, she wasn't necessarily intending to be the parent. Therefore, she has no parental rights. By the way, just an FYI, Chester Moore, the sperm donor father, is deaf and mute and lives with his elderly invalid parents. He's unable to care for these 3 boys. Now, in 2017, the Supreme Court refused to hear the case. The triplets were born prematurely. They were in ICU for 3 months with no visitors because Moore didn't want to have anything to do with them, probably couldn't. Cook couldn't because her parental rights were severed at that point. And now we have 3 babies suffering because of this idea that the birth mother has no rights since she didn't have this quote-unquote intent to parent. We're now at the question of we don't even know what defines motherhood. And that's scary to me. It may harken back to the idea that, as Charles Murray said, we no longer live in an enchanted world. In past societies, past ages, we understood that children were a gift from God. And what that meant was, oh, God gave me something, I get to do whatever I want with it. No, it meant that I'm a steward and I will have to give him back to God someday. That child, male or female, is one that I am responsible to rear appropriately so he will love God, number one. But more importantly, or as importantly, that I'm answerable to God when God calls due that individual. I had better give him up. I don't own him for me. I cultivate him for God. I'm a steward. And again, that's the product of an enchanted world, and we don't have that anymore. We've replaced God with technology. The scientist is our priest of our day. So
yeah, and I know that phrase from Max Weber, who talked about the process of disenchantment.
Yes.
Everything gets immanentized, because you lose the sense of the transcendent realm. But there are still people have talked about various ideologies, especially of the 19th century, being sort of immanentized forms of things that in the Bible says are going to happen. Like Marxism has often been called, I think it's even in the Catholic Catechism of the Catholic Church, an immanentized eschatology. Right. And, and it's just the old idea that through man as homo faber, maker of things, trying to instantiate or undo, in one sense, undo the curses that came with the fall, and also instantiate in his own power the things that God promises us are to come, but that he will bring into existence, like the new creation. And if there is, and one thing that Elul puts out in his book, Cain goes off to build the first city. Then his son or his grandson is Tubal-Cain, who's the first maker of instruments of bronze and iron. Right. So then you really get the idea of the first technologies developing, and this whole idea of us being our own maker, so now what made this? Well, the biological material was put together by scientists. Then you add in this genetic engineering technology, which, by the way, that's an enhancement to God's design. That's even better now. That's even better than what the creator of the raw material.
They still have to use God's blueprints. They just have to. They're just selecting the ones that they like best.
Right. The raw stuff is but it continues to remove us from nature. Right. And I think this was Huxley's point in Brave New World. John the Savage is one of they're born. These are the people who are getting born the natural way. And that is that's looked at as savage. It's barbaric.
They were the religious ones as well, by the way. They were the ones who
right. And it's not like Huxley was.
No, Huxley was an atheist all the way through.
He was sort of a weird pantheist, but he was by no means bought into a revealed religion or anything like that.
He's T.H. Huxley's grandson. Did you know that?
Yeah. But no, look, I don't think we've even scratched the surface on the abuses, especially when you get into the enhancement features. Because, look, the other dystopian take on this is not that we create a race of slaves, but that we enhance a type of humanity that then enslaves its creators, right? Which is, not so much the Frankenstein story, but there was a Star Trek theme with the Khan, the Wrath
or
of
Terminator, which is kind of mechanical version of the same idea.
The AI mechanical version. But I think the depth of look, it's right now it's just in an intent in an imagination, but I'm a little bit pessimistic on this. I tend to have the sense that if human beings can do it, they just will. I don't know how one's that just by making some ethical arguments.
Right.
It doesn't seem like we've been able to do that. And this is different than you might say like nuclear weaponry, like the developments and the technology that led to nuclear warheads, because that's clearly a matter of survival. Right. But we all feel like historians feel like we've come close. We're very close right now again. But this is different because it's not destruction. It's not like technology aimed at destruction.
Yeah.
Right? It on the face of it, unreflectively, one is going to be like, well, this is technology aimed at creation. How could this be bad? Right?
Yeah.
and one worries that, that kind of narrative will win the day, and that there won't be anything that really people can do to stop the march of something like
that. And you bring that point up, and let me talk a little bit more about that kind of thing, because what is also being left out in the discussion is the children themselves. How do they feel, especially as they come of age? We have actually now, because the first IVF fertilization happens 1978, Louise Brown, and then we start a process where a lot of women want to have children, but they aren't married. And so they look to sperm donors and things of that nature. And now we're starting to have a lot of data on sperm donor children. In a Slate article in 2010, Karen Clark and Elizabeth McQuard looked at sperm donor father and how being a product of a sperm donor father affected the emotional stability and overall well-being of the child. Now, here's what they found. And this is interesting because we have a control group as well. So we have a control group of, say, adoptive children, right? Children who not understood where their biological parents came from, but they have their adoptive parents. And we have the sperm donor children who they at least have one entity is in question. This is what they found. 2/3 of adult donor offspring agreed with the statement, quote, "My sperm donor is half of who I am." So over 66% held to believe that. Nearly half of them were disturbed when they found out that money was part of the process of conceiving them, that money had to be exchanged in order for the conception to take place. More than half say that when they see someone who resembles them, they wonder if they're related. 2/3 affirm the right of donor offspring to know the truth about their origin. And regardless of socioeconomic status, donor offspring are twice as likely as those raised by biological parents to report problems with the law before age 25. They're more than twice as likely to have struggled with substance abuse as well. And they're about 1.5 times as likely to report depression or other mental health problems. Now, if you compare that to adoptive children, here's what Clark and Marquardt write. They say, as a group, the donor offspring in our study are suffering more than those who were adopted. They're hurting more, they're feeling more confused, and they're feeling more isolated from their families. And our study found that the adoptees, on average, are struggling more than those raised by their biological parents. The donor offspring are more likely than the adopted to have struggled with addiction and delinquency, and similar to the adopted, a significant number have confronted depression or other mental illness. Nearly half of them, or more than half of them, agree, quote, "It is better to adopt than use donated sperm or eggs to have a child." Mm-hmm. So that's what we're looking at with them. Interesting story I think it was in the New York Times about a man who, California, he knew he was a sperm donor child because both parents were lesbians. So obviously he had a sperm donor father. He would go up to camp every year with other sperm donor children, right? Mutual support, things like that. At about 19, he started wondering who he was, put his name on a registry, and found out that one of his best friends at camp was actually his half-brother, which shocked him, and he said, I had to rethink this entire process. Matter of fact, he wrote and said, well, have you put his friend was on the East Coast, and he put his name on the registry. Turns out he's one of 32 from the same donor. And it really rocked him because he started saying, I started feeling like a commodity now. I was commoditized. And I had to come to grips with that. And they had a get together and the write-up he had to process this. He was 20 when the article came out, I think in 2017. And he did a photojournalist essay. So he could take pictures of all these people and say what their interests are. And he found some commonalities, of course, with people, not merely looks and genetics, but tastes and preferences as well. Also, in 2011, there was a write-up in the Times where you had one sperm donor who had 150 children from that individual. That's a staggering number of people who are related to one another. And it isn't surprising at all that these kids are commoditized. But listen to the depression rates. Listen to the things that this is not in the best interest of the child.
No. And that's still children who lived in a womb.
That's right.
Womb. Now we're talking about children who are going to be like, I was born in a factory. Like I was born in a mechanical device.
But your mom has an app so that she can sing to you whenever the thought might occur to her.
Right. Whenever she felt.
Because she doesn't want to be inconvenienced by having you around.
I mean, so what we're getting at, of course, is the need for love by the human person. Because again, these are still, I mean, the all of these children would still are they're not some kind of third thing.
No.
They are ontologically image bearers of God, right, in virtue of the bringing together of the biological components. And however you want to parse out the soul, probably at the moment of conception, there's a relational connection that needs to be in place for the person from conception to death, for them to know what it means to be loved, to feel loved. I mean, that's not to say that they won't be loved in their lifetime, but it is to say that there'll likely be some kind of deficiency in the love relationship that, as designed by God.
Well, we are social animals by nature, and human beings who are isolated. It's funny that some of the same people who would champion these kinds of ideas are politically protesting any kind of, say, solitary confinement because they consider that inhuman. Well, aren't you starting your child off in what's basically solitary confinement, non-human interaction? Because technology doesn't do it. And that's what you're teaching people. You're teaching them that we don't need to mess with you. Well, that's going to be a terrible parent. Any parent who feels that they can't put aside some of their life for 6 months in order to carry their child.
It even shows in the video, in the first part, the guy looking at the phone, and then the woman kind of comes and pushes him.
Hey, we don't have to worry about waiting.
We're not worried about let's have sex again. Because again, obviously what this does too, for those who would decide, is what is the purpose of sexual intercourse become then? It's purely a pleasure, an exchange of pleasure. Which is, of course, one aspect of sexuality, but I mean, you're eliminating the procreative piece and saying that that's not important. There was one other thing about that I wanted to say, that some other about the relationality. There was another dystopian novel, even well before Orwell and Huxley, by E.M. Forster, who was, again, no friend of Christianity or religion. He was one of the Bloomsbury members. And he wrote this in 1919. I haven't read it, but I read a very good article about it. It was called The Machine Stops. He talks about this idea of, in the future, everybody will be living underground in an isolated pod with a hot plate, which is basically our computer screens. And there's this machine that human beings create, and it provides everything for them. It provides their food, it provides their sustenance, but they all live. Everybody's in their own pod because it's sort of like a hygienically controlled environment, and any interaction is mediated through the machine. And there's something about that as well. And the idea of in the machine stops, of course, the machine breaks down at some point, and then there's this crisis in the story. The idea was to eliminate direct experience between human beings. Everything would be mediated through layers of technology. And here it's like you're starting with that.
Yeah.
the child, and as if the child in the womb of the mother. Now again, they open up with, what about women who don't have a womb? We understand, right. But it's at the same time, there is a sense of, oh, well, why wouldn't everybody do this? It's going to eliminate those painful birth contractions, and the complications and everything.
And again,
the answer to that is because something's happening in the womb, something that is relational, deeply relational between two human beings and the father, assuming he's there, that you can't recreate in a machine.
A couple of things, points that I think about. First of all, I find it interesting that the more progressive technologically we get and things like that, the more it disdains who women are and what their actual roles are and what their actual value to society is. Basically, we don't need you women, we can have a robot do that. I mean, that's almost what they're saying in some degree, which is, to me, if I was female, I'd come off my chair. I don't think. I think there's a lot.
It's almost like what the Industrial Revolution did to men.
Yeah.
You took away their primary function, which was work, to work with their hands, to labor, right, to cultivate, and it gets outsourced to the machine, right? The machine takes away the man's role. Primary social role.
So knowing a lot of women and understanding how women feel about the birth, a lot of women just want to have the whole experience. That's true. But obviously, you can see cloning, right? Here's a guy who doesn't want to be encumbered with any third party. He can clone himself, have the baby born gestationally through, EctoLife, and hey, it's pretty clean. I don't have to worry about anybody else. You can see those kinds of scenarios being set up in the future, and it's dehumanizing in that regard. But what I'm concerned about, there's a couple of things before we close. First of all, yes, we should use technology to mitigate certain medical suffering and difficulties. I'm not against that. Reconstructive surgery. I don't think plastic surgery is necessarily the right choice in most circumstances. I often wonder if we lost all of our records and in 10,000 years an archaeology team starts to dig around Beverly Hills, they'd be puzzled why we burying, what are these silicone discs everybody worshipped and buried with such reverence, but reconstructive surgery, absolutely. If you can mitigate some aspects of pain in childbirth, maybe epidural, medicine can do that. If we can figure out a way to help women conceive who may not be able to conceive naturally, there may be ways to do that, but there are also limits in that as well. We don't go and implant, say, 8 embryos into a woman's uterus, because those 8 embryos you may get octomom, which is exactly why that happened. They always, because these are such expensive procedures, they always over implant. And then they do what, if more than 1 or 2 take, they do what is called selective reduction, which is basically they abort 3 or 4 of the children in order for the remaining embryos to develop into more likely through full gestation. Now, even in surrogacy, you're seeing at least a 47% failure rate after IVF. So it's not a clean process. There's a lot of babies being created who then turn around and die. The stat that they try to sell in the video is there's no more miscarriages. That's just not true. Mm-hmm. It's just that you don't pass them through your body.
Unless mechanical failure in the apparatus.
That's right. Yeah, well, and you're working with genetic materials. Sometimes babies,
we haven't even gotten to the very concrete issues.
Yeah,
right?
Sometimes babies just don't grow right. I mean, that's what cancer is. Cancer is within our own bodies. We have things just go awry. So it's all it's very sanitized. But my concern is, what do we do And my bigger problem is the church hasn't been talking about these issues at all. They may point to this and say those crazy people over there, but they don't realize that many surrogacy centers will put ads in Christian college newspapers so that co-eds can make some extra money and think like Melissa Cook, who's pro-life. Think, well, I'm providing a benefit. I'm giving life. I'm being a blessing to someone else, not realizing that part of what you may be doing in the process is actually causing babies to either be aborted or be abandoned.
You know, I would say I have some degree of faith in the church. I want to get my ecclesiology straight and never confuse Christ and the church. You know, even though we are the body of Christ, the church, one area where the church always seems to struggle is in catching up with where the culture's at. I mean, we're just now starting to have public discussions on 19th century philosophies that have affected the culture. I mean, things that started with, you know, you go as far back. I mean, I'm thinking of Carl Trueman's excellent genealogy of ideas and Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self.
Yeah, we're talking about the romantics right now.
We're just getting on top of like what the romantic poets were hoping would happen. You know, of course, they wanted this sort of to happen through art. Now it's happening through technology in a sense, but. You know, just in our dealings with wokeness and everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're just becoming aware of this. And it's like, well, when are we going to become aware of this stuff?
Yeah.
And it's already there. It's like, how long is it going to take before we start having the very robust moral, ethical, and metaphysical discussions, religious discussions? Because again, I mean, you think like, what if we create things and then we worship them, right? I mean, that's what idolatry is.
Psalm 115,
second commandment. You know, this is another sort of work of our hands that we're going to look at and say, are we not great in our own strength? And so I don't know. I don't have. I have faith in God, and I certainly will do our best to wake the church up to these issues, but I do always think that the church just inevitably lags behind terribly on ideas and they're burgeoning, and then they're gaining ascendancy in a culture. But we'll do what we can.
Okay, well, I think that's a really good spot to end on. I hope all of our listeners have enjoyed this discussion. I'm sure there's a whole lot more here to mine, but I want to be cognizant of our time.
I'm sorry. I should.
Yeah. Well, Tony, thank you for coming on. We'll do this again. There's lots of issues to talk about, and I just love having you on. So I appreciate all that you've contributed here. It's been great.
All right. Thank you, brother.
All right. Thank you. All right. Sure. That'll do it for this Come Let Us Reason Together. Thank you so much. And until next time, we'll see you then. Thank you for watching this Come Reason video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more videos like these, consider subscribing to our Come Reason YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button. And you can follow us on social media. Lastly, if you'd like to help keep these kinds of videos free, consider providing a donation by clicking on the donation button beside me. Thank you.